Very good afternoon to Mr. Sir, everybody. Welcome to a very exciting session today. We're going to talk about does Singapore have a conducive startup ecosystem, and what else can we do to make it better? So we've been given a nice introduction about all the panelists. So let's jump straight into the questions. So let's start on a more positive note. So my first question to the panel today, what exactly, Singapore has done a lot of things, both private, both government. What do you think that are some key things that they've done really right, that have really contributed to the ecosystem being so vibrant today? Probably about to.
Hello? Okay. I think there's many things we've done right. We started a company here, we also now done it in Europe, and so it's a lot easier here. It's really, really good for that. You can do things very quickly, it's very clear how to do companies, how to start them up. One of the big advantages I found here, and it depends on the industry, but for our industry there's a great concentration of technology companies around. We could take a taxi ride within 30 minutes, find a partner. And just what Johnson was saying actually is key. I mean, we were leveraging getting buy-in from companies who were willing to work with us. And they were actually we weren't getting investment from groups, we were actually getting them to start manufacturing for us based on future profits, etc.
So more like partners then, I would say?
Yeah, partners. So that there were companies, at least in our space, which was more on the automation, IT, well, not IC, but IC side, but they were risk-taking and had the technologies around all in one area. Now, I'm not sure that's the case for all technology areas, but for ours it was great. So.
If you look at where we are, I would say that in the last 2 years perhaps, I feel that the ecosystem pieces do come together in a significantly different way. In fact, if you look at for this to work, you have to have many building blocks, and research, entrepreneur, angel investor, the enterprise sort of getting involved. So the government is sort of working on the different pieces over time. For the first time, I think over the last couple of years, I really feel that a lot of these pieces are coming together. And if you look at 4 or 5 years back, you don't see forum like that so much. In the last 3 to 6 months, some of you might have attended Demo Asia and similar forums. There are so many of them. And when you get in there, you just don't see 1 or 2 stakeholders. You see everybody there. So and also the diversity as well. It's not just about seeing a lot of Singaporeans. In fact, half of them are foreigners, which is a good thing because you really need that diversity. And Singapore today, I mean, I don't think that if you look at Asia, there's somewhere else that would have that combination of building block. And certainly I think the government did a great deal to actually bring this together. I think at this stage, it's really for the private sector to really harness all this building block and put it together. And the result is that I really think that it's going to be, if you look at number of investment that is going to happen, it could be 100, 200 a year for seed-stage company, compared to perhaps 30, 40, maybe 3 to 5 years ago. So it's a good time.
Got it. So in your case, it's many different groups coming together and then having that melting pot and tipping point, which is kind of happening right now.
Yes, yes. This is the time.
Okay. Philip?
Yeah, from our viewpoint, a couple of years back, at least just looking at the number of startups coming out of ETPL or A-Star, we would see something like 5, and we had 7 in a year. That's a great year. Last year, that number kind of doubled. Of course, I went out looking around and say, well, what secret juice did we just bring out in the last 1 year? Yeah, of course, some things have changed. Our guys in A-Star worked a lot harder, a little bit more focused. But I think what really facilitated and helped, the doubling of the digit, of course, we're asking ourselves, can we double that again? I'm not sure, but it depends. So obviously, the things here that you guys do and say will probably make a difference. But we get the sense that, well, like what Leslie said, a lot of things, everybody trying some things on their own, whether it's NRF, the Spring, organizations like us, even in the NUS colors, they're doing a lot, NTU. We're all looking at more or less the same ecosystem, the same elephant from different directions, and we're doing our very best to do something. But because it is a fairly small ecosystem, I think we tend to be accidentally aligned with some of these things. And some of these things do come together, and that helps. Just imagine, or just thinking, now that the question is asked, if all these players were to sit together in the same room and put our plans and match our blueprints, so to speak, whether things would be better. Of course, there's a school of thought that says maybe not. The more you plan it, the worse it gets. There's such a thing as too much for the government to do, or those who think they're part of the government anyway. And but on the other hand, for different people to try different things from different angles would be a good thing as well, because it's different strokes for different folks. If everybody goes into a single mindset, that may not be a good thing. But you don't try, you don't know. I think in the Tech Connect Task Force, we are asking similar questions. How some of these things we do, we should continue to do them individually. But some of these things that we do, maybe we should coordinate in some parts, so a bit of a hybrid system. But for sure, we should have some visibility of what the other side is doing, so we don't, step over one another or cancel each other's effort, which sometimes can happen as well. And I think there's the part about who are the other players that we have not brought into the fray, so to speak. We know we've got the young people, the entrepreneurs, we know we've got the scientists in there, so we're trying to get them. Scientists to think like entrepreneurs, it's not an easy thing. Maybe also not the best thing to do. But can we get more entrepreneurs into the ecosystem, those who have done it, been there, made it, in other areas, but get them to try to understand science and technology a little bit more. Not for the sake of it, but well, if you want to do a business and to be globally competitive, you're going to have to differentiate. And if it's a differentiator that you know well and things that you can protect through an IP, it would be an advantage. The question is, how do we exploit this a little bit better altogether? So I think the key going forward would be somewhere in there. The key agencies coming together, but definitely doing it in such a way that attracts entrepreneurs to come forward. Sitting at this end, thinking that do ask whether we've done enough to try to do that, the push idea. We've got a technology, we've got an idea, and try to push it out to get people to bite. I'm not sure if there's any more that should be and could be done there, as opposed to looking at the other end, the people with hunger and money. That's a good combination usually. And getting them to come forward to pool technologies and pool ideas and to try to co-create some of these things to better construct a more robust business model so that whatever we push out has a higher probability of success. So this is some of the things that's really going on.
There seems like a lot of organized chaos among the various agencies, but all collectively, moving forward towards the right direction. So thanks. I think Johnson?
From my personal experience, I've been comparing 10 years ago. I think it's evolved a lot, especially I just want to echo the rest of the panelists. I think in the recent couple of years we've seen a lot of initiatives and funding schemes. I think one of it is the PPP, which they call the private-public partnership, and I think Clearbridge is one of the beneficiaries. So I think it's a nice model to kind of leverage on the private side and also have the risking mechanism on the public side. And one of the things which I've been quite privy to is that I'm also on the Hong Kong and Science and Technology panel. So it's one of my pet things to kind of compare, what makes the Hong Kong entrepreneur versus the Singapore entrepreneur. And that's the reason why a lot of pet things about looking at how to train and teach entrepreneurship. So one of the things which one of the missing thing is definitely the human capital here in Singapore. I think there needs to be more dedicated efforts towards resolving this. I mean, we have a lot of spin-off companies, and one of the key things which we always have difficulty is to recruit the right people to run us. So as a result, just to echo back the rest of the panelists, we have investors from all over in the US, in in China, in Hong Kong, and I think that's a very nice mix. So you bring all this expertise back here.
Good. Okay, so I'm going to touch upon some of the points that were mentioned specifically, and some of it was pertaining to investment, some commercialization, IP, and human capital. So before we get, let's focus on the investment part. So on the entrepreneur side, I spend a lot of time with entrepreneurs, and they always have this big gripe on how there just isn't enough early stage investments. And it's ironic since we have two investors here on the panel. But on the investor side, you have this thing whereby there's just not enough good deal flow, not enough interesting companies to invest in, in Singapore mainly. So a lot of them are actually going overseas. How do we? It's a problem that's kind of difficult to solve. But what are your viewpoints on that from an investor's perspective?
If you look at early stage investment, in fact, you're probably trying to dissect them into 3 different segments. Company that's still in the process of developing their product. The second one is after they develop the product, they're trying to get some initial market traction. The third is that after the initial market traction, they are trying to grow. So in fact, the size of money that they need and the valuation, everything is different. So the answer, I guess, is yes and no. I think if you look at the product development side, the government, there are so many schemes out there, TCS, iGEM, the $250,000 to $500,000. If you have a reasonable idea, I think you get funded, right? So and even the incubator like ourselves don't get into that space because it's there, right? You need to get your product ready. Then you have the initial market traction. These are seed stage. And this company need maybe $500,000, $800,000 to validate what they have in terms of commercial viability as well as whether the product works. And we have now, I think, about 15 TIS incubator in the market. Right? This year, we were one of them, Red Dot Venture. So there are 50. Each of them is supposed to do, individually they are going to be different. We have 5 to 15 of them. For us, we wanted to do 50 investment a year. So that's why I come up with this 100 investment for 6-stage company. So if you have a reasonable idea again, I don't think that you would not be able to convince one of the 15 to actually go with you. So I don't think that there's problem in terms of money, right? Are there enough of this opportunity in the market? If you look at Demo Asia recently, 70 startup pitching. Tech Asia, another 70. Even the neighbor, Indonesia next week, there's a sort of Tech Asia, Jakarta. There are 1,000 people, 200 startups. So I think there are enough opportunity out there, there is enough money out there. I think a lot of people feel that there's not enough money, probably those that have gone past the initial traction. So that's effectively the Series A. Even the Series A, there are 6 NRF endorsed funds. We are again one of them, which is Extreme Venture. We invest up to perhaps $3 million a company. But that is a challenge because we're supposed to do 2 companies a year, but we struggle to try to do that because I think it's also a timing issue. If you look at a lot of these 6-stage companies, they are going to get a little bit more mature. So it's going to be a pipeline that allows the Series A to start investing in this company, perhaps in the next 2-3 years, right? So, but if you have the pipeline coming through 100 a year, that Series A will be fine as well in 2 to 3 years.